Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and to bear true faith and allegiance to the same. That I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and the orders of those officers appointed over me according to regulations and the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So help me God.
We celebrate Veterans Day on the anniversary of the armistice that ended World War I, the armistice that began on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. The timing of this holiday is quite deliberate in terms of historical fact, but somehow it always seems quite fitting to me that this day comes deep in autumn when the colors are muted and the days seem to invite contemplation. It is, in a way, an odd thing to honor those who died in defense of our country, in defense of us, in wars far away. The imagination plays a trick. We see these soldiers in our mind as old and wise, but most of them were boys when they died, and they gave up two lives, the one they were living and the one they would have lived. When they died, they gave up their chance to be husbands and fathers and grandfathers. They gave up their chance to be revered old men. They gave up everything for our country, for us. And all we can do is remember. I will not fail thee, nor forsake thee. In memory of those who gave the last full measure of devotion, may our efforts to achieve lasting peace gain strength. Let us make a vow to our dead. Let us show them by our actions that we understand what they died for. Strengthened by their courage, heartened by their value, and borne by their memory, let us continue to stand for the ideals for which they lived and died.
In the long history of the world, only a few generations have been granted the role of defending freedom in its hour of maximum danger. I do not shrink from this responsibility. I welcome it. I do not believe that any of us would exchange places with any other people or any other generation. The energy, the faith, the devotion which we bring to this endeavor will light our country and all who serve it. We shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe to assure the survival and the success of liberty.
The 10th Annual Veterans Celebration Dinner held by our Troop Care Ministry team here at Desert Hills. On behalf of all of us, thank you for your service to our great nation. I'm Blake Zandbergen, an Air Force veteran and current chair of our committee. You'll see the team members tonight wearing lanyards, so you know who they are. I hope you'll join me in thanking them for all the hard work they've done, not only for tonight and making this happen, but thank them for all the work they've done for our congregation as an outreach and support to those currently serving. Thanks. Can you see them? I see Shirley doesn't have hers on, so maybe she'll grab one. All right, this one over there. All right. It certainly has been a challenge, been more challenging to serve our troops recently. But your support, both in faith and financially, has enabled us to continue to serve them well, and we thank you for that. Thank you for joining us again in person this year. If you watched our virtual celebration last year, I'm proud of what we were able to do, but it's not a match for being together again and getting to visit the pie room after dinner. That's my favorite. Tonight, we're going to start the evening with a farewell to those veterans we've lost, followed by a wonderful service medley by the Fountain Hills Saxophone Quartet. Please stand for your branches song, and for those inclined, you can sing along. We'll have the lyrics on the screens. I don't know that I will sing. Following that, we're blessed to have a speaker with an amazing story and message joining us tonight, Winnie Fritz. We'll be live streaming her presentation for those that couldn't be here. And I was going to say, don't worry, because we won't start live streaming until after the singing is over. But I've been told they're going to live stream the whole thing, so sing your best, I guess. They say they won't be able to hear it online, so. After the singing, after her presentation, Winnie has agreed to answer any questions you may have, so save those up for afterwards. Then we'll have dinner and give away some prizes during dessert. To begin the evening, please stand for the presentation of the colors. Color guard, please post the colors. All right, you can please be seated. Thank you for the Boy Scouts for that. We're going to do the farewell first. This month marks the 100th anniversary of the repatriation and reinternment of an unidentified World War I soldier at Arlington National Cemetery. It was done to bring home the body of an unknown American warrior who in himself represents no section, creed, or race in the late war, and who typifies, moreover, the soul of America and the supreme sacrifice of her heroic dead. The tomb of the unknown soldier has grown into a powerful national symbol of service and sacrifice. Whether the members of our veteran family we have lost were unknown to you or not, please join us in honoring them and their family's service and sacrifice. Van Jones. Alan Totticini of our Loop Sister Church. Jim Shaw. Ed Morgan. Lloyd C. Ferguson. Susan Siganowicz. Harold Buck Coghlan. Please join me in prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for bringing these fellow veterans into our lives. We respect them, we thank them, we honor them, we are proud of them, and we know you will watch over these special people and their families and bless them with peace and happiness. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you very much. Now, it's interesting to see, and Shirley would probably know, how many, I saw we only have one Marine stand and no Coast Guard people, but we actually have quite a few active duty. Three Marines, 3 Coast Guard, and several Marines too, right? So there are quite a few. And I hate to admit it, but Army did beat Air Force today in football, so we went down in flames today, apparently. But. All right. Oh, it was in overtime. All right. If you need any drinks, please, now is the time. I'm going to introduce our speaker, so please do it while I'm talking. I first heard our speaker tonight, Winnie Fritz, present at a Veterans Heritage Project event last year with Arch Rambo. I wasn't really sure why, but I felt a connection to her stories and her service. I don't know if it was her coming from the Midwest like me, the fact that she was a nurse and obviously strong woman in person like my mother, or that I could relate to many of the situations she talks about, but it really made me think. I'm sure most of you feel an immediate bond with others that have been in the service just like I do, but Winnie's story really resonates with me. After hearing her speak again on Memorial Day, I decided it's because of all those things and the fact that she spans an era from Vietnam to my own experiences of being in the Middle East with Desert Storm. I think that makes it relatable to a wide number of veterans. Her positive message about life, service, and country, while detailing her amazing experiences, really gives you something to think about, be grateful for, and hopefully drive you to continue to be involved and serve however you can. I cannot thank her enough for agreeing to share her message with us tonight. So please join me in welcoming our guest speaker, Winnie Fritz.
Thank you. We'll do just a sound check. How are we doing? Everybody okay? All right. See if we can press down when we mean up, right? See, we're all trainable. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening. I'm so honored to be with you and had a chance to visit with some of my colleagues, other veterans, before beginning. This evening, knowing that tummies are hungry, obviously that's a motivation, let's move along. But I wanted to share life lessons, as Blake and I talked about this evening, and what do we talk about? I said, well, maybe if we talk about life lessons that I've learned in combat and in peacetime as a veteran, and maybe in the next few minutes together, really to review 50 years that I've been a nurse and still active, and some lessons that I have learned now working in 22 different countries. Now, I put here, maybe at the end, you can describe at least 5 lessons. I'll bet you some of these will resonate with you, and you have your own lessons that you've learned from being in the military. So let's begin. Lesson number 1. As mentioned by Blake, I'm an Illinois girl, grew up on Fritz Farms in Illinois. The farm is still there. 7 generations later, I can still go home and sleep in the same bedroom I slept in as a baby. I have one brother there. I have one brother always, and he still survives. And we only have green tractors on our farm. I was home in May, and he said, all right, Dad and Mom would be proud if we each got on our green tractors. We've got soybeans and bean to plant, and we had lots of babies. I think we had 45 baby Angus cows, baby calves, and 41 baby goats, and I don't know how many hundreds maybe of Duroc baby pigs, and 12 kittens, so it was abundant. But we were a team, the 4 of us. It was the Fritz team. And a part of that team was faith. Grew up in the Bethel Baptist Church. We were there every Sunday morning for Sunday school, for church. We were back for Sunday evening service. We were always at Wednesday evening prayer meeting. So it was always a great part of my life. And I thought I'm the oldest of the 2 kids, and I thought every 4-year-old steered and drove a John Deere tractor. I thought that. And I thought every 4-year-old helped their dads with C-sections of the cattle. And on Monday, when somebody would say, what did you do over the weekend? know that a lot of people maybe didn't go to the bull farm with their dad and buy sperm to inseminate the cows. So Mother and Daddy would get up together, they would make the bed together, they would go down and cook breakfast together, then they would go out and milk the 35 Guernseys together. I only learned one thing that mommies and daddies do different, that mommies wash dishes and daddies dry. I was a good student, I'm sure, like people in this room. Played the clarinet during the winter band and played snare drums for summer. Was an honor student, like I'm sure you were as well. And so it came time to think about college. My mother was a college grad. She's there. She was a college grad, and my grandmother was a college grad. We were clearly going to college. This is obviously pre-Google, and we needed our counselors to help us choose the right spot. As an Illinois resident, I went to Mr. Stuckey and said, I'm thinking of the University of Illinois, but as I understand it, I would be on campus at Champaign-Urbana for 2 years, and then I would be in Chicago at Cook County, and that's not an anti-Chicago statement, but I really want 4 years of campus because I'm going to try out for marching band. I want to march at the football games. So he said, well, you know, there'll be out-of-state tuition if you go someplace else. Well, I said, I understand University of Missouri-Columbia, Mizzou, is a good school. How much will it cost if I go there with out-of-state tuition? And he turned to me and he said, you know, Winona, I'm not sure you're college material. Why don't you just go down to one of the hospitals in Alton or St. Louis and maybe they can teach you a skill and you can work in a hospital, etc. Well, I went home that evening and said that to my mother and my dad, and they said, we don't care what Mr. Stuckey said, you're going to college, and we'll figure it out. And they said, let this be a first lesson for you. You can either choose your words to be encouraging or discouraging. And we would say to you, dear daughter, let your words be encouraging. So that has stuck with me throughout life. I mean, in our family, it would be, that wasn't a very encouraging statement. And so in life, then I try to continue modeling that behavior. And even at work, if I'm the CEO or the chief clinical officer at a hospital or at home with my husband, I try to keep the criticism to compliment to criticism ratio at a 10-to-1. Occasionally, my husband reminds me I'm a little off at the 10-to-1. Some of us are old enough to remember, I think it was the 70s, transactional analysis, TA, there were TA groups. One of those expressions you will remember, it was you get the behavior that you stroke. I think we've forgotten that a little bit. You get the behavior that you stroke. If we pay more attention to the positive, we tend to get more. So I, myself, and for you, let us inspire and compliment others today. Now I'm off to Mizzou. I got an Army Student Nurse Scholarship and I went off to Mizzou, University of Missouri-Columbia, and entered the BSN program. We began with 136 students and we graduated 38. They were serious about producing quality. Miss Poundstone, Eleanor Poundstone, wanted us there at 4:30 in the morning to review our care plans. Martha's nodding her head, she knows what I mean. And she wanted to review our care plans for our patients before we took report at 6:45. And she would keep saying, this is a good plan, but what if? What are you going to do if he starts to bleed? What are you going to do if his pressure drops? What are you going to do if there are no sterile dressings on this unit today, et cetera? What if? And she said, it's easy to teach you technical. It's easy to teach you interpersonal. My job is I have to teach you to think. Because what I teach you today is going to be outdated in 5 years. My goal is to teach you to think. I must train you hard so that you can fight easy. So that became an important lesson for me. Mentally rehearsing each day and kind of playing the what ifs. Eventually, I'll take you to another chapter, but eventually when I was in flight school, the instructor said, how are you always ready when I turn off the engine and we don't have gas and I shut it down and say, land this puppy? I said, Eleanor, she taught me what ifs. Always think of the plan B. And some of you, I am maybe saying 100% of them in the military, remember the 5 Ps? Anytime I was assigned to do something, they would say, ma'am, have you covered the 5 Ps? The 5 Ps are prior planning prevents piss poor performance. Yes. In Vietnam, we standardized our work. Our goal was to standardize our work, about 85% of it if we could, so that we would have 15% of energy, time, and space to punt as we needed to. We were able to, a helicopter would land, 6 casualties would be on board. We had 6 stations in the recovery area. They were like carpenter sawhorses. The stretchers would come in, the top 2 would come up here, the middle 2 would come here, the bottom 2 would come here. At each station, we had a trauma surgeon, we had a nurse, and we had a corpsman. The corpsman would see if we still had legs. The corpsman would take off the boots, start cutting the uniform off, peel off the trousers, if you will, and assuming there's an intact pelvis, would insert a urinary catheter. We assumed no arms and legs, and so the nurse would put in a subclavian catheter, and the physician was focused here, intubating, and we had them in the OR in 15 minutes. Now, I finish at the University of Missouri. Actually, the Army had me double course up and finish 6 months early. They needed nurses in Vietnam. And so now I'm off to officer basic and Vietnam jungle training down at Fort Sam Houston, Texas. And there I learned a lesson of travel light. Travel light. Now, at a very practical level, they were dropping us out in the Texas desert individually with a compass, a map, and a flashlight, and we had to find our way back, etc. They just said, be careful about not getting too close to the bushes. That's where the snakes and scorpions are, but get yourself back to point A. But there were also practical courses of how to be an officer in the military, learning the ranks, and they would say, travel light. Don't collect Hummel figures. Don't collect fine china. You may want to go with rugs, baskets, maybe even artwork because it packs and travels well. And so I learned to travel light. Now in life, I still can put most of my belongings, I think, in about four 1-ton cargo pallets and move. My husband says this rule, I have a rule, if we don't wear it or use it in 3 years, I give it away. The other day he came out with a t-shirt on, he said, notice this is now in the 3-year interval. We're now in the 3-year one on this shirt I like. But the point that I use each day is really trying not to carry baggage and to resolve things and to get over them. That we weight ourselves down with, Martha hurt my feelings, and so forever and always I'm going to be upset with Martha and carry that baggage. Years have passed. I'm going to give you an example of how I use that lesson. I happen to be the CEO down in Tucson of 2 hospitals for a period of time. Something was going on between the lab and the med-surg unit, medical surgical unit. Some processes were not working well for patients. So I called those 2 directors in, and I said, we need to get this issue fixed. Help me understand either how to help you or how to stay out of your way. But help me understand what the issues are so that we can get this fixed by Friday or Monday, and let's get it fixed by Friday. Well, one of them, the med-surg nurse, the director, had her pager go off, and that was okay. It was a physician wanting to talk about a discharge, and that was all right. You could take calls from patients or physicians. I said, please just step out, Pat, and then you can come back in as soon as you're finished. She stepped out, and the lab director said, you know, I don't think I can work this out with her. And I said, well, what is the issue? And she said, I just don't like her. I can't work with her. I said, well, you know, I don't care. I don't like 80% of you, and I come in here every day, and we focus on giving exceptional patient care. We're here to provide exceptional care to those who need our services. We don't want to hate each other. I want people to respect me, but the idea that we are all here, 1,350 people to all become best friends is not practical. So my expectation is that you will work together and get this fixed by Friday. So she left, and the rumor went out there that Winnie doesn't like 80% of the people. And so people would come up and say, who's on your 80% list? And I said, see, you don't know. And you never will, because that's not the point. You don't know the 80% or the 20%. Nobody will know. Another variation of transactional analysis is deliver the mail to the right address. People would come in my office and say, I'll pick on Martha, that Martha's saying somebody hurt my feelings. That Blake, Martha says, Blake, hurt my feelings. And I would say, Martha, sounds like to me you need to deliver your mail to Blake. My badge doesn't say mailman, right? Because I'll screw up the postage, I'll screw up the delivery, or some part of that message is not going to be delivered correctly. So the message of 3 is travel light. Now then, as soon as we finished Officer Basic, we were to submit a request of where we would like to be for a few weeks before being sent to Vietnam. They wanted us to get used to the routine, get used to the pumps, the suction machines, ventilators, etc. Any place they could send us in the military, all I needed to know was where to put my handbag and where to go to the bathroom, because everything else is all the same. And so they wanted us to choose a place to go. I'm not from a military family. I have no idea what I put on my request. That you may have put, I want to go to the Presidio in San Francisco. You put, I want to go to Tripler in Hawaii. You wanted to go to Walter Reed in Washington, D.C. I have no idea what I put, but I opened my orders and it said, Fort Rucker, Alabama. I said, well, why am I going to Fort Rucker, Alabama? And they said, well, we're having a pilot program. In Vietnam, we're having a challenge. The Huey-D, we've all seen the Stallone movies with that helicopter. We would fly Huey-Ds, medevac helicopters, and the doors are always open. You have 2 gunners on the skids, and you can stack up 3 stretchers on 2 racks. And they said, we're having a challenge in Vietnam because if 1 or 2 of the pilots, there are 2 pilots, 1 or both pilots are shot, nobody in the back knows what to do. And if somebody in the back is shot, nobody in the front knows what to do. So we're going to cross-train all of you so that no matter which of you is shot, that the others know how to do the job. So I was sent to Fort Rucker, Alabama. There in aviation, as with any aviation program, you're learning the aerodynamics, how does this aircraft work, you're learning weather, you're learning the regulations of the air, like the FAA regs, the rules of the road. You file a flight plan every time. I still have flown throughout my life. And you always file a flight plan. I don't know that I've ever taken off without one. And in that, you always plan an alternate landing site. If you lose instruments, if something comes up, if there's a bad storm that emerges, you always have a secondary plan of where you're going to land. But the issue is you take off. I think the important lesson is not only having an alternate plan, but for heaven's sakes, execute. Many of us have been in, whether it's schools or churches or offices or businesses or hospitals, we plan ourselves to death. We plan and we plan and we plan, waiting for that perfect plan, but we don't execute. And it's not uncommon. Pilots take off and they have maybe better tailwinds, so they're going to get there sooner, or they have a headwind, and they have to call and adjust the flight plan a bit. But out of this plan your flight and fly your plan, the subset of that is to execute, not to be afraid of alternative landings, but also just to take off. Some of you know the name of Jack Welch, the auto industry, and I always like Jack's comment, when it comes to strategy, ponder less and do more. So this is lesson 4. I received orders now to go to Vietnam. I was to report to McGuire Air Force Base in a Class A uniform. That is a Class A uniform. I was to report to McGuire Air Force Base and obviously be transported to Vietnam wearing a jacket like that, a skirt, pantyhose, and 1-inch pumps. I said, is this really possible? This has got to be a mistake. I'm sure I've been in combat boots and fatigues. Are you sure it's a Class A? Yes, ma'am. They said they wanted you in Class A. All right, I will report to Vietnam with pantyhose and pumps. At McGuire Air Force Base, they lined us up in a big hangar, and we received boarding pass, or numbers, not names, but numbers, 1 to 200. I think I was 186, and we were all told to line up abreast. 201, so I'm 186. I'm looking left and right, and I'm nudging 23, and I'm the oldest person in line. I'm the oldest person in line. I'm the only female in line. That's not, remember my first step there, that doesn't bother me. But I'm looking, and I say this lovingly, there are grunts, younger grunts on either side of me. They're in combat boots and fatigues. So I raised my hand to the infantry colonel, and I said, "Sir, am I in the wrong line?" "No, ma'am, you're not in the wrong line. We were told there was one female, one officer on board today. You are that officer. These are you men, and you take them to Vietnam." "Sir, I was told I would have command responsibility at a hospital unit. I was told I would not have troop command." Now, I will clean up what he said, but he said, "I don't care what they told you. These are your men. Take them to Vietnam. Ma'am, life's an adventure, step up to the plate." Life's an adventure, step up to the plate. Obviously, those words stuck with me over the years, you know, that you are in charge, accept the adventure. It took us 3 days to get there. I won't go through all the issues, but we were taking off, actually, and another aircraft clipped us, clipped off a tip of our wing. We spilled fuel, emergency evacuation, etc. We had another breakdown in Kadena, or in Anchorage, and we had another one in Kadena, Okinawa. By the time we got that far, the pilots in the front of the 707 knew I was a pilot, so I was getting 707 time. But this adventure statement really rung true with me throughout my career. That issue of not being afraid every time I was trying a new role, or somebody said, "Why don't you try this adventure or this new setting?" One of the things I learned from my doctoral advisor is that listed there on number 4. When I was beginning the doctoral program at the University of Maryland, my advisor said, "I would like you to go away for a weekend. I understand you like the beach and you like crabs, so just go away to the Chesapeake Bay for a weekend. And I want you to focus on 3 questions. If you got up in the morning and you couldn't wait to get to work, or you couldn't wait to get up and go and serve, what would you be doing? With whom would you be doing it? And where? What would you be doing for me? Would that be clinical? Would it be an educator? Would it be an administrator? Would it be a researcher, whatever? With whom? Is it going to be community groups? Would it be hospital professional, healthcare professionals? Would it be with babies in a neonatal intensive care unit? Would it be overseas? And where? My answers to 1 and 2 have changed over time, and my colleagues will say to me, with 3, we can just drop you off anywhere and it doesn't make any difference. She also offered wisdom to do that every 6 months. So since 1983, I have done that every 6 months of asking myself, what would I do with whom and where? It's been very helpful to not lose the adventure. So now we're arriving in Vietnam. As we approach the runway, there's some monsoon rains begin. The pilot says, "Folks, when we land, you have to get off quickly. We are a big target. You run for the red chairs in the receiving area. The people in the blue chairs that will be getting on the aircraft, and we'll be departing promptly. We're a very big target." And so we arrived. Now, mind you, 3 days, I haven't had my shoes on. I'm still in those pantyhose. I can't get the pumps on. I look like a raccoon with the eye makeup. And so my men, now they're my boys, they were not trying to be facetious. We've been through events of 3 days together, and we're going to war. And they came up to me there in that front seat in the aircraft, and they said, "Mom, we're worried about you going into a war zone." And I said, "But we're all going into a war zone." They said, "Yes, but what are you going to do for Tampax?" And They weren't laughing. They had really been pondering this extra challenge I was going to have. And I said, there was no smile, there was no laughter. And I said, well, they just told us to bring a 2-month supply and they will take care of the rest. But Mom, are you going to be okay? Can we stay in touch? Absolutely. Let's try to find each other and stay in touch. They're now being taken. Oh, the pilots were afraid I would get soaked wearing, my uniform with the monsoon rain. So they took a trash bag and cut arms and neck and put that over me to wear. And my boys had filled a trash bag with all the Kotex, Tampax, soap, and Kleenex they could find in the aircraft. So I reported in, carrying my shoes, running in the rain, wearing a trash bag, carrying a trash bag of sanitary items. And Captain Fritz reporting to the Lieutenant Colonel Infantry, and he said, God dang, you look worse than the people who've been here for a year. So I said, it's a long story. Now they're loading up my boys in the deuce and a half trucks. These are my boys. And I know that many of them aren't going to come home. So we say our goodbyes, and the colonel says, I'll take you to your quarters for the evening, ma'am. It's like a little camping trailer, and there's a little cot in there. There's a little refrigerator with a bit of food and beverage. You'll have to, I know you haven't showered for 3 days. There's one of those little camping lawns where you sit on the john and shower. It's covered with sandbags, top, side, bottom, so unless you take a direct hit, you should be okay tonight. And we'll put a padlock on the door for your safety. That was a very long night. But as we're driving there, he was escorting me there in his Jeep, and we're bouncing in the puddles and the monsoon rain, and I hear and see rocket fire. He said, ma'am, I am infantry. I've never been in healthcare, but if I could offer you some advice, this is my 3rd tour. And I would like to offer you advice about your 2 priorities while you're here. Are you interested? I said, yes, sir. I'm ready to learn. I need to learn. And he said, ma'am, your first priority, and I'm quoting, he wasn't being, he said, your first priority, ma'am, is to save your own butt. Don't do anything stupid, and do not fly with a first-timer pilot because he'll get you killed showing off. And 2, save as many other butts as you can, and ma'am, the rest is crap. It doesn't make any difference who hurt somebody's feelings. It doesn't make any difference if we had weird rations today. It doesn't make any difference. Focus on your 2 priorities. That was important. Those were important messages to get and to receive that focus. I've carried that through in life, trying to focus on 2 to 3 priorities. You in your careers, you in your church work, you in your community work, we all plan. And we have priorities. Sometimes those lists are 5 long, 10 long, 15 long, whatever. And somehow we feel, let's push all of them over the line. My own experience has been, let's pick the top, let's keep them all on the whiteboard or the list or whatever. Let's pick the top 2 priorities, let's push them over the finish line, let's celebrate, and then let's take the next 2 and work on those. So picking our priorities and then also putting aside all the other stuff. I left Vietnam on a stretcher 10 days before my year was up. I was stabilized in Camp Zama, Japan, and then air-evac'd back to Walter Reed in Washington. Arrived and they loaded us there at Andrews, loaded us onto transport buses, those racks of stretchers on the side of buses. And we were greeted in Washington by garbage cans and trash being thrown at us, saying, damn you, go home, you're all baby killers, etc. That was our welcome home. I recovered and then worked in the ICU for a period of time, and then was selected to manage the presidential suite. At that time, the presidential suite was 8 suites, and they had 2 rooms each suite. One was like a 1-bed intensive care unit, and the other was an ante-room for a spouse and aide de camp. And we took care of the president, the vice president, congressmen, senators, 3-, 4-, and 5-star generals, and foreign heads of state. Along the way, one of the things I decided to do was to do a research project. I could select, they told me I could select my staff, the physicians, the chefs, the laundry people. I could select any staff I wanted from around the world as long as they could get a top secret clearance. So I had a great team. And I decided to interview our patients at the right time and ask them one question at the appropriate time. What is one leadership lesson I should learn if I'm to mature to be an effective leader? Tell me one lesson. One of the best that I received, I felt, was from 5-star Omar Bradley. We were caring for him at the end of his life. And he said, that's easy, Captain. Leadership implies followership. If you turn around and there's nobody there, you have a problem. Using military language, if they don't have the boots they need, the rations they need, the weapons they need, the ammunition they need, if they don't know and believe in the mission of the day, the enemy will overrun your headquarters. Either one, because your troops cannot protect you, or two, more sadly, they don't care to protect you. So leadership implies followership. Throughout life, that's obviously been an important message for me to remember. In ways that I think about it, I always think recruitment and retention is like a three-legged stool. People come to and stay at positions where they're compensated, competent, and cared for. Obviously, we can't over-communicate with each other, whether that is our church, whether that is our hospitals, whether that is our community organizations. I round a lot and shadow people in their work so that I really know their roles. And a practice that I have begun years ago is that every week I write 5 personal thank you notes and send them to their homes. And we have emails, we have texting and all of that. But imagine if a physician, a lab tech, a housekeeper gets a note at home and the family can see that the hospital, for all the times they've asked you to work overtime or whatever, that they appreciate you. So I try to teach my next generation of leaders to write those notes. There is no I in team. One of my other patients, we took care of foreign heads of state as well as 3, 4, 5-star generals. And one of those patients was King Hussein of Jordan. And he and I first bonded, probably first over aviation. Some of you may remember his career. I would call him a benevolent monarch of the country of Jordan, the constitutional monarchy of Jordan. His son, Abdullah, is now king. Hussein passed away. And so he was there as a patient, and I asked him that question. And Hussein said to me, here's the lesson I would want you to know. I would want you to be wise. And I said, how would I know I'm wise? He said, wisdom is knowing when to take 2 steps forward and 1 backward and still appreciate that you made progress. I have a lot of practice doing that, he said, right? But he said, often we get discouraged. We take 2 steps forward and out of necessity, we have to take 1 back and we feel a failure. Recognize there's 1 step forward. You're still making progress. We talked a lot together about priorities, and he said, you know, I think there are like 3 kinds of priorities. Sometimes a priority is just an easy win. We are just starting to work as a team. Let's have one that's going to be kind of an easy win so we can kind of figure out how we work together. 2, sometimes the priority it's foundational. That Blake wants to do this first, and I say, I get that, but we've got to pour the concrete in the foundation before we deal with the carpet. And other times, in your worlds, of your careers, and in healthcare, sometimes that priority is if we don't do something, people's lives will be in danger. So kind of thinking of priorities in different ways. He also taught me to journal every day. He eventually invited me and worked out with the State Department and the Department of Defense, and I transitioned to become a part of the Jordan Armed Forces and worked in their healthcare system there, have been a part of the Jordan ecosystem since 1972. I still have a home in Jordan. And he taught me to journal. He asked me if I journaled every day. I said, no, I don't. And he said, I would suggest you do that. We don't know how this will work out. We think it's going to be good, but keep notes every day of the situation, of remember, write down those things of progress you made, of the challenges, of what didn't go well. I have now journaled every day. You'll be a part of my journal tonight. I have journaled every day since 1972. I have to tell you, it also helps on tax audits. They asked me once when I was working in Jordan and my paychecks were coming, Jordan Armed Forces, into my bank account in the US. The IRS said, we want to do an audit. What is this money coming from in the military in another country? We're auditing. And they said, what is all this unreimbursed expenses? And I said, I'm giving books to the colleges and so forth and so on. They said, for example, let's pick this day where you say you have an unreimbursed expense. What about April 18th? So I said, well, just a moment. I opened up the journal and I said, let's see, I was wearing a yellow wool shirtwaist dress. I had a gold and yellow scarf on. I was teaching the following class to 32 people. He said, never mind. Calvin Coolidge, this one is by my desk every day. He begins my day. Nothing in this world can take the place of persistence. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. 9, now I'm in Jordan. I'm working there. I was in a position first as a lieutenant colonel, then in a BG slot, a brigadier general slot. I first was in a researcher role, assessing the health status of Bedouin families. Then I was in an educator role. We were doing curriculum design, instructional systems development at the schools of medicine and nursing. And then was in an operations role of a 28 hospital system. As we were doing all of that, I was one person. And I went to His Majesty when he would give me, if you will, suggest another assignment. And I said, sir, how am I to do this? I'm not with a Peace Corps. I'm not with the 56th Medical Group. I am one person. How do I make a difference? He said, one person at a time. One person at a time. Don't worry about making a difference with all of the hospital people in 28 hospitals, but make a difference one person at a time. Sit down. We now, in schools of nursing and medicine, we work with those candidates to say, please sit down and talk at the bedside with the patient. Please relate to them. Put down that we all have our mobile devices, to please put those aside. And so it was wisdom that he gave me about being present and making a difference one person at a time. I came back from Jordan, moved. I still didn't close the house or sell the house or anything, but came back to be near my aging parents in Illinois, and came back in 1989. And since that time, have moved around in different hospital systems, have been in 6 different hospitals and locations in the US. And back here, suddenly I was hit with some of you know these really well, the MORs, the monthly operating reviews, 7 hours of detailed reviews, and quickly had to get schooled in financial kinds of things. We're building new hospitals, so I had to become knowledgeable about architecture and engineering and facilities design and so forth. And wondered how was I going to keep up with this, and one of my mentors suggested you have to stay current to stay ahead, just keep learning. And so at that time he suggested that I take a speed reading class and said there are 3 speeds and you'll be able to keep up with all the literature so that you can read 7 journals a day and a book a week. And so that's been a good deal for me over the time. I think it's also helpful just to do informational interviews with other people of saying, tell me about what you do and what is your day like and so forth. But the whole idea of continuing to learn, whether that is, I think I'll learn to play golf. I think I will learn to play poker. I think I will learn to teach a Sunday school class. I think I will learn, but all of us, I think in general when we stop learning, we begin to, the word that comes to mind, I apologize, but it's kind of begin to decay if we're not learning and bringing freshness into our lives. Now then, I was invited to participate, or actually to become an employee with HCCA International. That's an organization that's been around since the mid-'80s. It's based in Nashville. but they work overseas. I mean, all of our work is overseas, hospitals and healthcare systems in Asia, the Middle East, and in Africa. A little bit in South America. I was traveling about 200 nights a year. I was on the road. The house was in Surprise, and my husband was there, but I was traveling 200 nights a year, about 200,000 air miles a year. And you can imagine, canceled flights, delayed flights. We keep secrets from our spouses. If we have to be overnight in the hospital to be rehydrated because we've got Shigella dysentery, we don't tell them. And delayed meetings and bad roads. The lesson I learned there from colleagues that have been doing this for a while, I said, how do we do all this, the stuff that just pops up? And they said, control the things over which you have control and stop trying to control everything else. So it began then, and has influenced me in this way. Each morning as I kind of ponder, my husband, we're all different, thankfully. I like to wake up at 4:30, 5 o'clock, and my husband wakes up more like 7:30. So I have that quiet time to kind of get myself centered and going. And I think about, what's all this on my mind? I know it's on the calendar, but it's on my mind. And I make up 2 columns. This is the column I have control over, and I really can make a difference on these things. And I move over on this column, it's on my mind, but I can't think of one thing I can do to make a difference with that. I'll keep it there, take a look at it again tomorrow, but I can't think of one thing I can do to influence, make a positive difference, make that better. And so I move it over there, because this list seems to always be big enough to keep me busy for the entire day. So I learned that from my colleagues along the way. Then leaving a legacy. Down at St. Mary's, I told you about 80%, 20% I don't like and do like, and that sort of thing. And there we began to have conversations about leaving a legacy. They said, well, you know, you're 65 now, you're 68 now, or whatever, are you going to retire? And I began thinking, no, probably not. But how do I also begin nurturing the next generation? I need to make sure I'm doing succession planning and that sort of thing. And I need to teach them ways of relating to others and being maybe better managers. So we began doing lots of rounding. I think it's also a lesson in front lines know. Over time we begin to know that we've been on the front lines and the commander didn't listen, no matter what organization that is. So we began doing what I called the stupid stuff rounds. We'd start at 1:30 in the morning at the hospital. I would take as a CEO, I would take my chief financial officer, chief medical officer, chief nursing officer, and I said, okay, we're going to start 1:30 in the morning and we're going to round from the top of the building to the basement, shaking hands with everybody. The housekeepers, every nurse, every technician, the maintenance people. And we're going to ask this question. As you drive to work today or tonight, what are 2 things that you think about that you think is really stupid? I don't know why we do it that way. It costs us money, it doesn't help me do my job, it complicates things. What are 2 stupid things that we do? People had all kinds of lists of stupid things. And they knew how to save money, they knew how to save time, they knew how to be more efficient. And then we could implement things off of our stupid stuff rounds. So I think those are lessons about how do we groom our next generation, how do we leave a legacy. I always felt I learned that the ultimate compliment, I believe, is if you can leave an organization and nobody notices. Oh, they notice your great personality, but nobody's wondering what do we do because they know what to do. My parents had sent me off with the go where there is no path and leave a trail. And a part of that at the end was also leave others who can go down paths and make trails. One last one. Now that I'm back doing the international again, we're working in Africa and the Middle East and so forth, and we were on a construction project. They wanted us to manage a new hospital in Abuja, no, this was Lagos, Nigeria. And so I said, well, if it's not built yet, if it's a new facility, I want to fly over there and work with the architects and the engineers on the design, the site and space planning, so that we're not trying to manage a hospital that was poorly designed. I know there are some healthcare people here, and I will say, anytime I walk in a hospital where there's long hallways, I know a hotel guy built it, not a hospital guy. because we have to staff more to take care of the patients. We may save money on the construction, but in 5 years, we will eat up the savings on supply and staffing cost. So I wanted to go over there to work with the engineers. I arrived, and these are young 35, 40-year-old architects and engineers in Nigeria, very talented, very talented. And they had sketched out all the site plan and had drawings of, you know, the rooms and so forth, and said, take a look at these, what do you think? So I studied them for a bit. And I said, okay, well, you've got the hospital here, and you have the main entrance here, and you have the emergency door right next here. There's a street. Over here is the outpatient building. The lab is over here. The cafeteria is over here. We won't have to worry about patients because we're going to wipe out a bunch of people on that road going back and forth to the lab and the dining room, et cetera. They said, really, what should we do? I said, we should get those on one campus, not a main traffic thoroughfare between these main functions. We need service roads for the trucks delivering food and medication and so forth. I said, I don't think the exam rooms are 80 square feet. I don't think the patient rooms are 250, 260 square feet. I don't think the ORs are 375, 400 square feet. Well, how will you staff this? I said, well, the ER, I don't know, I'll staff probably 2.2 hours per patient per day kind of thing. Med-surg, I'll try at 8.5, 9.5. They said, how do you know all this? You don't have pieces of paper. How do you know this? I said, I'm old. I've been doing this a long time. And they said, write this all down. But now the point of all this, I needed to sit with them and meet with them in person is always what I like to do. Meet with the team in person. Then if I'm sitting back here reviewing 54 detailed plans and sending back observations about the doors the wrong way and, you know, we need the HVAC system working differently, then it's not, who is this woman back in the United States, that we all know each other and can work together. But the notion of I finally figured it out comes true at this point in my life, having been doing this now for 50 years. But the message to all of us, I think, to myself each morning is don't stop, don't confuse movement with progress, and just keep contributing. I might use another expression in this one that I didn't write on the slide, but someone said, you're now 75, when do you plan to retire? And I said, I don't know that I do. I said, you know, when I die, I just want to be all used up. Just want to be all used up. So we've explored some life lessons. The military taught me so much at the beginning of all of that. I mean, they gave me the gift of learning through my degrees. They paid for all 3 degrees, for which I'm grateful. They taught me to learn and to not be afraid of skills. They also gave me the gift of service, of continuing to figure out how can I get up in the morning with COVID. My neighbors, and please know, I mean, I'm vaccinated and I take this seriously, so please don't misunderstand what I'm about to say. But the neighbors in Sun City Grand said, you just haven't been freaked out about this. And I said, well, understand, I'm working. I pray that you don't misunderstand what I'm going to say. But I said, I work in Africa where I work with Ebola. It's 47% death rate. I work where there's MERS and SARS. Those are 26 and 32% death rate. I work where there's cholera and typhoid, and depending how fast we get the IV fluids going, that's 12 to 16% death rate. I myself have had typhoid and hepatitis at the same time and had antibodies that lasted from 1983 to 2012. I mean, the T cells. The pathologists would always say, ooh, you could eat raw sewage and be okay. But I said, again, please don't misunderstand. But I said, I take precautions, and I'm careful about this organism wants to find lung tissue, so I'm careful that I don't give it entry to my lung tissue. And I'm vaccinated, et cetera. But I don't lose sleep over 0.2 death rate. Please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I take this seriously, but I said it's just perspective that I said I wake up every morning trying to figure out how I can live and serve, not trying to figure out how do I not die. Again, I pray that that's not misunderstood. But the military gave me gifts of perspective, of not being afraid, of punting and going into those places and saying, okay, I got to figure it out. We have glass IV bottles at the POW unit. They're breaking the bottles and trying to cut our throats. So we said, back home, Mama's putting peaches and peach juice into plastic bags. Why don't we put IV fluids into plastic bags? Guess what? We had to be able to move the whole hospital in 24 hours. If you have incoming round, it stimulates you to move, but 24 hours. And with that, here are these, I mean, the ventilators at that time were the size of your washer and dryer and mine at home. And we said, we can't move 144 people with these big kind of washers and dryers. We're sending people up to the moon, et cetera. Why can't we get something like this with a strap on it that we can move with patience? And they created those. So a final thought is, out of all that we have been through in the last 18 months, number one, I guess, I hope that we all get up in the morning and can pray, how do I serve and how do I live and serve? And two, how do I not just focus on how not to die, but also how do we prepare our next generations, and how do we pass along the lessons that you and that I have learned? And so I'm grateful for the military that has given me so many of these lessons and so many of these experiences. And I'm very honored to be your guest this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So she's agreed to answer some questions. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask?
Thank you, ma'am.
You're very welcome. It's my honor to be with you, sir. Thank you. My honor. Does anybody? Yes, yes.
Just curious, what does your husband do?
Oh, yes. She was asking about my husband. Maybe I'll just connect a dot on how we met and so forth. My first husband and I went to Vietnam about the same time. He was in the artillery. He was trained to be, he was at Fort Sill learning to fly helicopters while I was at Fort Rucker. He was trained to fly the Loaches, the light observation helicopters. We now use drones. But you fly at 120 knots at treetop level, and you use language like, we're taking rounds in the bubble. That's where we found the enemy, because you're taking rounds into the bubble of your helicopter. He was shot down his 4th month in country. Then I was doing the things that I was doing. I had been in Jordan 14 years. Before I went to Jordan, after His Majesty and I agreed I was coming, he said, now, when will you be here? Next month, whenever you will be here. I said, I will be there in a year. He said, what do you mean? It takes you a year to get to Jordan. Why? I said, well, the 5 Ps, prior planning, prevents piss poor performance. I want to do 5 things before I come to Jordan. I want to be able to speak Arabic. I want to do nothing but an immersion experience for a whole year. I want to be able to speak Arabic. I want to understand Islam. I'm a member of the Spirit of Grace Lutheran Church over in Sun City Grand. My life has been that of a Protestant faith. But I needed to understand, there, 90% are Muslim, 10% Christian. And any of us in healthcare, in fact in business, we need to understand the culture that we're going to and how it impacts holidays and food and diet and disease, etc. So I want to study Islam. I want to study Middle East history and culture and understand the Versailles Treaty, the Balfour, the Sykes-Picot, and how we created the borders that are in that part of the world. 4, I want to be able to do Middle Eastern cooking. And 5, I want to be able to do Arabic dance. So I was immersed for a whole year. So now I arrive, and I'm working there. I had been there 14 years at that point. I did not know him, but my husband was born in Jordan. He is Kurdish. We know the Kurds, the Peshmerga fighters that helped to protect the Yazidis, that fought with the American troops in Iraq, etc. They have fought, I think it's now with 5 or 6 administrations in different wars. Women and men are all in the military together. They serve together. There's an Arabic word, it's called dugari. Dugari is straight arrow, no forked tongue. Very kind. I don't mean mean-spirited people, but they're very dugari. My mother-in-law might say, "This jacket looks so good on you. It's great with your color." She might also say, "I wouldn't wear that again if I were you." But I like people that I don't worry when I walk away that there's something going in my back, you know, that they said it to me. So I was meeting British people in Jordan. Jordan has, let's say, the typical population of Jordan is 6.5 million people. They now are 10 million. They have taken in that many refugees. So, connecting this dot. My husband graduated high school. His family was in Jordan when we, the West, gave away Kurdistan up there. So he then went to University of Utah, Salt Lake City, where he studied hotel and restaurant management. So he was there and had a very positive experience in Salt Lake and Utah. Then he went to Michigan, bought a restaurant, and was managing a restaurant there. He's the oldest of a total of 3 boys and 5 girls. His father was in the military, died age 58 of a heart attack out on maneuvers. He felt he needed to move back to Jordan. He had been in the United States 12 years. By that time, I'd been in Jordan 14. So the manager of the Intercontinental Hotel came to me that evening when I came home. I was living at the Intercontinental Hotel, and the manager said, "Winnie, you're going to have to break in another food and beverage director." And I said, "Who is it this time?" And he says, "Well, at least he's been 12 years in the United States, so this should be easier." So I met Mr. Marwan Kurdi and worked to break him in there as the food and beverage director. We met in 86, we dated in 87, and we married 88. But his career is hotel and restaurant management. In 89, when I moved back to the St. Louis area, he was on his way, but then was delayed and sent to Petra to manage the 90-room hotel in Petra because they were filming Indiana Jones and down in Petra. And so he was there, the hotel was filled with the whole crew of Sean Connery and Harrison Ford and all that. So he was delayed about 6 months getting back to the States. But his career is hotel and restaurant management.
How many of your boys made it home?
To the best of my knowledge, I'm going to round it out to say, as what I know, about 40%. As much as we could collect information, about 40%. As you all very well know, I mean, the grunt in Vietnam was not, it was not a good role to go into. It was not a good role. Yeah, those were my boys. Yeah. Any other questions that you can think of? The military is really, I really encourage people to do that. I mean, all kinds of things come into my head in the spirit of scholarship and opportunity. I mean, how it was great for my parents, needing to buy farm equipment. But they obviously wanted me to be educated, as with my brother going to University of Illinois. And for me to come back with no debt. I got a bachelor's, a master's, and doctoral degree with no debt. It was great. I mean, it was great. Obviously, you owe time back, but it was a wonderful opportunity. And I think it gave me also that whole gift of adventure. Again, you're so used to kind of being dropped off, and you figure it out. And at the risk of it sounding too schmaltzy, we begin to learn more about how we are more alike than we are different. How we're more alike than we are different. We were talking before about my husband, again, a naturalized citizen. And this is not meant to be a political comment, but what we were saying is that my husband at times will watch television and the news, and I first said he will yell. No, he doesn't yell. Yeah, he does yell. It's television. And what he says to sometimes people that are talking, "You need to get on the plane and go with my wife to places she goes, and then let's see if you come back and complain about us and who we are." I mean, there's nothing, maybe the majority of us are born here, natural citizen. But the naturalized citizen, I mean, to tell you, they are very strong about having gone through 5 years of becoming a citizen, and are very honored by that. And he frequently yells that to the television. So yeah, he is one of my very best cheerleaders. You know that. In fact, my Kurdish mother-in-law, who is now passed, but when I began to date him, she only spoke Arabic and Kurdish. And so the more she began to see me with him and so forth, she said, "You're going to be very good for him. He's my oldest. I love him dearly. But, you know, he needs a strong woman. This is going to be good." And she said, I taught out of all 8 kids, again, raising 8 by herself after her husband's early death. She said, I wanted all 8 of them to have degrees in college so that they had careers and that anybody could marry if they wanted to, but I wanted them to marry because of love. And nobody had to, that they could have their own life. And I wanted everybody to be able to cook, to sew, to iron, to do laundry, to clean a house, to operate a vacuum. I said, well, you've done a lot of good work for me. This is good. So he's a very good partner. He's been a very good partner. People have said, can't believe you're going to let her go to, ISIS is there. Or I can't believe she's going to go to Nigeria. I mean, Boko Haram just took the girls. Or aren't you worried she's now on her way to Davao in the Philippines, and that's where Abu Sayyaf terrorists are? I mean, what if she's captured? Well, he said, at first, I keep thinking, she's a Vietnam vet. She was in, Middle East during Desert Storm. She knows how to, precautions that she takes. She'll go into a rant in Arabic, lecturing them about the Islamic faith and that their mothers would be disappointed. And God knows she wouldn't shut up. I think they'll call me in about 18 hours to pick her up.
Yeah, I think there's one more in the segment.
Yes.
I worked many years ago with a young nurse who'd been in Vietnam.
Yes.
She was very bitter about
Yeah.
the reception which you
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. She said that she knew a nurse that had worked, and about the reception when she came home. Yes. Do you know that, boy, I get that message. I mean, I understand that. And, coming in on a stretcher and being received like that, I had to go back to one of those lessons of, travel light. How long was I going to hold that? There I was, a patient. Now, I was telling them I had a very, very smart physician, but also the head of my care team when I was air-evac'd back. But also, I'm going to say, very intuitively talented. Now, I'm recovering from my injuries. And he said, I need to give you purpose. I mean, he knew some of the things we had gone through and were going through. And he said, I need to give you purpose. That you're able to get up each day out of the hospital bed, and you've learned how to start IVs where people don't even know there are vessels. So we're going to get you in scrubs, and we're going to put you in the oncology unit to start IVs. This is your room that you come back to at night, and you're a patient, but we're going to have you starting IVs. A little time went by, and he said, still there's something going on. What are you thinking about each day? And I said, I have never touched American soil yet. I've been on a stretcher, a bed. I have not really been welcomed home. I mean, forget the welcome. I haven't even touched soil. And he said, what would you like to do? And I said, I'd like to go out and roll on the grass in front of Walter Reed. And he said, okay, guys, let's go out and roll in the grass with Captain Fritz. And we went out and rolled on the grass. But it was very helpful. Along the way, I was selected. Perhaps somebody recommended me. I'm not sure, but I was selected to be a part of a research project in the Harvard Psychophysiologic Lab that followed us for years, saying, what happened to these people that were in Vietnam? What happened? The relationship issues, the substance abuse, the alcohol issues, etc. And for me, it was the relationship issues. I mean, Ray had been shot down his 4th month in country. I'm coming back like this, etc. I wanted to say goodbye to people in Vietnam, and I'm not saying anybody did anything bad, but I said I need to say goodbye to so-and-so and so-and-so. And they said, put her out, and gave me an IV infusion and put me on the plane, and I woke up in Camp Zama, Japan. It was all this unclosure stuff. And so they followed us and treated us and learned from us. They were very careful to be sure we were not guinea pigs. And let me say there were 2 things, many more things they learned, but here were 2 key points they learned. In Vietnam, they sent us all in individually. Remember, I went in not with a 56 medical group or with a group. I just went in one person. And they learned, we never want to do that again. We thought it was a good idea with Vietnam, and never do we want to do that again. We're sending people in as a group. Now I'll exaggerate. But they come home dead and alive together so that they have shared experience. When I arrived in Vietnam, I was given a big piece of paper, as was everybody, about this big, and it had a 3, a 6, a 5 on it in little tiny, almost like a crossword puzzle kind of thing. And everybody's were all over the walls. And so when I checked in, they said, put yours on the wall. I said, to do what? And they said, mark it off. You've got to survive 364. And so if I'm going out to a village today on a medevac mission, maybe I say, would you go with me, please? Give me a break, Wen. I'm a 2-digit midget, meaning 99, 98, 97, 96. And I turn to you and you say, no, ask Blake. I'm a 1-digit wonder, 987654321. And they weren't being mean, but everybody was on their own journey. So they said, we never want to do that again. And the other thing they learned related to that is that people without a tether struggled the most. And I'll explain. At that time, we were sending people into space. And if we went out of the cockpit of the capsule, if you will, there was that tether, back to the space capsule with oxygen, et cetera. Now we go out with the suits independent, but the tether. And they said, you have this plexiglass plate, obviously not a real one, but I just came back with a plexiglass plate under my skin. I was never going to form a relationship again. I was never going to hurt that much again, because if you don't have a relationship, you never have to worry about hurting, right? So I was never going to feel that way again and keep losing people and have people die. And I was never going to feel again like I did at the mutilation. And I'm going to say what I felt, and please, I apologize. But my first mutilation lady that I found in the village in Vietnam, we went in with infantry to go into a village after the North Vietnamese had gone through. And they would clear the area. This means 2 grenades and I'll fix this problem. And then one finger was go over here, and I heard someone crying in this hooch, and they said, over there, no talking so that you can hear. I went in the hooch, and a 25, 30-ish young lady, Vietnamese lady, was lying on the floor exsanguinating, the concrete floor exsanguinating. North Vietnamese didn't kill people in the village. They would come in and mutilate their fathers, their children, their wives, and leave them to die. 1, you save bullets, and 2, you then get a disorganized enemy. They're running on emotion, not on strategy. They had taken a bamboo pole, sharpened it, and 5 foot, whatever, thrust it into her vagina, tied her ankles around the pole, tied her hands behind her back, cut off her breast, and left her to die. I had not been prepared for mutilation. Please know, I couldn't talk about this for 5 years, so this is, I can talk about it. There was no part of my nursing training where I was to hold and comfort and euthanize somebody, because there was nothing else I could do. And now this is the part that startled me. One of my most startling moments in my life was then I sat there after she passed, and I said, I want to kill the sons of bitches. This little Baptist girl, this little girl that has grown up with love and surrounding. And how do I deal with this? I can't imagine my veneer is that thin. I began to learn how thin our veneer is. That we humans sometimes need to help each other to not be so thin on that veneer. But then to get back to the tether, they found, as they talked with us about those issues, they found that those of us that had a tether did better. I was afraid of drugs. I was afraid of alcohol because I had corpsmen and I had nurse friends that I sent home on ventilators with 4 respirations a minute, brain dead, essentially. And it terrified me. But I had the plexiglass plate. And so they said, you have a tether. And I said, tell me about the tether. They said, you're going to make it because you have a tether. And your tether is your faith. And your tether is your family. And you know that if you came back, whether you came back amputee, whether you came back brain dead, whether you came back a drug addict, whether you came back a rape victim, no matter how you came back, your family and your faith. And many of my colleagues didn't have that. Yeah. Well, now a project that I'm working on now, not to belabor the point, but a project that now with many organizations we're working on is really the mental health and suicide issues of veterans. I'm sure you all know at least 22 veterans commit suicide every day. And there are issues with that and with the services being provided. So we're trying to get better response and so forth. So anyway, that is a longer answer to that, but I understand her pain, and people have tried to change some of the systems to help individuals in those roles. Great.
All right. Thank you again. Thank you, Winnie Fritz. All right. Now it has come time to eat. I ask Pastor Jim to give us our blessing.
Let's pray. Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you that you're greater than everything. We thank you that you hold us in scary times and scary places. We thank you, Lord, that you get us home to wonderful, bright spaces as well. Gracious Lord, we pray for those who are not tethered right now this evening, that they would find a connection with you and that they'd find a connection with us and that we would be connected. Gracious Lord, the enemy does want to divide us, but you're greater. Lord, I thank you for all the people who volunteered to make this evening possible. I thank you for the people around each table so that we could be connected to each other and how food does that. May your spirit do it even more. And thank you for Winnie and for her story. Thank you for watching over her and all the things that you've been doing through her and enabled her to be part of. So bless her family, and just bless us in this food. In Christ's name, amen.
Okay, so just a little bit of housekeeping. You're going to see some people getting up. Those are your volunteers, and they're heading to the kitchen to get your food ready. So it'll be coming out shortly. So now would be a good time to get a beverage. And our pie room, of course, if you don't know about the pie room, ask somebody at your table. So when you are served and when you are ready for dessert, make your way over for pie and ice cream. See that big door? The 2 doors are open. That's the indoor. So go in that door. Don't come out. Go in, get your pie, your ice cream, and there's going to be another door. And that's the outdoor. And it's going to bring you through the hallway so that we can all get our pie fast. So now, everybody, look under your plate. One person at your table is going to have a piece of paper. We have a little trivia game for you again this year. And in honor of our speaker, Winnie, it is about women in the military. Do not use your phones, your cell phones. Feel free to rat out another table. So this is a competition. Work together, and we'll see which table can get the right answers, the most right answers. So everyone, enjoy your meal, and your food will be out shortly. Take care.
Because I couldn't lift down those.
I know, I could sound like.
I could not lift down the A's. No, I know, but that reminded me. Okay. Great. Eric, old lady for
still in question.
Easy for Dale to fit through there.
Hello, everyone. Hello. We have all of our veterans who signed up for the dinner. We have a bucket with your names in them, and we have 3 gifts for our veterans. Regis Dugay. Raise your hand, Regis. Up high. There we go. Regis, what branch did you serve in? Navy. Eddie Smith. Where's Eddie? There's Eddie. You were Army, right? Army. One more name. Last name. Wally George. Oh, he had to leave, but his son, Mark George, is right. Raise your hand, Mark. We'll make sure Wally gets his present. Don't keep it for yourself, Mark. And what branch was Wally in? Air Force. Cool. We had a good representation there. Okay, so how do you think you all did on the quiz? Terrible, bad. It's so hard when you can't cheat. Okay, are you ready for the answers? We're going to go on the honor system, so keep track of your answers. Okay, number 1, although they weren't officially enlisted at first, women have served in the U.S. Army since 1775. Number 2, after the Civil War, Dr. Mary E. Walker was awarded the Medal of Honor for her work as a contract surgeon in the Union Army. In 1917, Walker was stripped of her medal due to changes in regulations. After many appeals, her medal was reinstated in 1977. Lynn says she didn't know the difference. Okay, number 3. In 1866, Kathy Williams was the first African-American woman to enlist in the Army, 1866, doing so under the pseudonym William Kathy. She was assigned to the 38th U.S. Infantry. Despite being hospitalized for illness several times, she managed to hide her gender for almost 2 years before a post surgeon discovered she was a woman, leading to her discharge. Number 4, in 1918, twins Genevieve and Lucille Baker became 2 of the first women to serve in the Coast Guard. 1918. Number 5, during World War II, 88 American women were captured and held as prisoners of war. How y'all doing so far? Number 6, in 2004, Colonel Linda McTagg became the first woman commander of an Air National Guard wing and also the first woman to command an Air Force fighter squadron. And our last one, number 7, in 2005, Sergeant Leigh Ann Hester became the first woman since World War II to receive the Silver Star for combat actions. Okay, so tally them up, folks. Number 6, I have in 2004, Colonel Linda McTagg was the first woman. Okay, so we had 7 questions. Did any table get 5 of them right? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Keep your hands up if you got 6 of them right. Did you get 6 of them? No one got 6 of them right? But we got we had 4 tables. Wait, you got 6 back there? 6 or 5? 5. You guys got 5. You guys got 5. You guys got 5. Okay, how are we going to do this? It's a 4-way tie. I can't cut the books into quarters. So, do you have a tiebreaker question? What year did Ms. Winnie Fritz go into the service? Well, that doesn't really help because you're at one of the tables. So you're going to get it right. So that really stinks. Okay. So you got a pen handy? Yeah, writing pen. We're going to make you guys table number 1, you guys table number 2, you guys table number 3, and you guys table number 4. Bring me your writing pen here, Bonnie. Thank you. Joshua, can you come up here and help me for a minute here, please? Hey, folks, I think Joshua is probably our youngest veteran here tonight. Can you give him a hand? He's the grandson of Bill Billard. Will you draw a number? Draw a number. Just one.
I looked at 4.
Okay, do it again. Shake it up. 2. That's you guys back there. Awesome. So we have some gifts. We have some Veterans Heritage books. And just to tell you about these books, that was the first year that we, as a chapter, interviewed veterans from our church. So Dave Hulbert, Dave's in that book. And Lynn Oates is in that book. And then Susan Saganowicz, who just passed away a couple of months ago, is also in that book. So we've got VHP books for you. And I hope you all had a wonderful night. Take your time, finish eating your pie. Don't worry about dishes. We'll take care of it for you. Safe travels, everybody. God bless you.